This is the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with your host, Vicki Davis.
So now we're going to talk with one of my friends and colleagues, Dawne Beck, who is an ELA teacher here at school with me. Now, Dawne, you and I have been talking about AI since ChatGPT came out. And I remember the first time you and I sat down, I think it was the January after it came out. Let's just back up to that moment about how you felt when you saw this as a writing teacher.
Right. So I think when we first talked, we didn't quite know how to process or where we might be going. And so we had a lot of fears and concerns, but really it became an opportunity that we began to talk on how we could use it, both to educate ourselves and educate those students. So rather than being intimidated, we wanted to see it as an opportunity.
We got there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think at first we agreed to kind of like walk away and say, hey, we're going to come back and talk about it because it was upsetting at the very beginning,
Right. We didn't know where it might lead. And even now things continue to roll out and it's a matter of continuing to educate ourselves.
And I think about the statistic I saw the other day that less than half of American teachers have been trained on artificial intelligence.
Whoa.
I know that's kind of scary because we feel like it's so yesterday, but less than half. And I know that the first year that I was teaching about artificial intelligence, I had somebody cry in the audience every single time I saw it.
Yes, I think we saw that even with our own teachers here on campus because it felt overwhelming.
It is overwhelming when you see it type. But I was just talking to my 8th graders about artificial intelligence today, and the definition is that it is designed to imitate humans. So it doesn't know if it's right or wrong. It just knows if it sounds human. So let's talk about fast forward to now. How do you teach writing now? And I just want to say you've been through a lot of training classes. Can you say some of the classes you've been through so people know the context of, I'm using this framework, but I'm also incorporating what I know about AI?
Right. So we use at our school a program called the Institute for Excellence in Writing. And also I've been trained with the Lost Tools of Writing by the Circe Institute. So between the two programs, which teaching writing with structure and style is what we began with in 4th grade here at our school, and then we're carrying it up through the senior class. And those two things combined are very sort of old tools that we use to teach the writing process. And what I'm actually finding is that they blend well with integrating AI into it and training the students how to use it in a profitable manner.
So how do you integrate AI into teaching writing?
So what I've switched back to where I had been more allowing students more freedom, like do your composing on a Google Doc or things like that. It's really reminded me to go back and focus on the process of writing. And I'm setting even like very pragmatically, my point values almost equal on the process as I am with the finished product. And we do that by beginning to just track the process in class because I've come to the point where if our writing is important enough to do, then it has to be done in class where I as a teacher can monitor and help the students understand that I place value on the writing process of seeing their thoughts come to life. So we brainstorm in class. We have a variety of methods that we use with that. We do collaboration. We do peer assignments together to develop brainstorming and thoughts. And then we create outlines. Those are composed in class, those are shared in class, often as an additional speaking assignment, sometimes with even a grade just for that part of it. And then by the time they come to the actual writing process, then it seems to be more of a natural step. And it also means that the students feel, I think and hope, but very much prepared for that final step, which is the actual final composition. And then I follow up with AI with that, with some of the activities that you and I talked through when we first began, such as having the students compose, then use AI for editing. And also one of the things that I really have found to be helpful for the students to understand the use of AI is composing according to a prompt, and then going back after this entire process and having AI compose an essay with the same prompt and then doing some comparison. And you know what we always find, which is that the AI generates things without the human touch and soul, and students invariably are less pleased with the product when it is produced by AI than they are with their own essay writing.
And I think that's a really important realization for our students is to realize that AI is really good at average writing, but that humans can write in a far superior, unique way. AI is kind of like plain Jane everyman, humans are like, we're unique and we have these different perspectives. And now you also use artificial intelligence for them to get formative feedback using your rubric. Describe how that works.
So one of the ways that we are using it for evaluation is I have to make sure that I write a clear prompt. And then I'll have the students, after their composition, to run their essay through ChatGPT or whatever we're using with the prompt and feed it, ask it to evaluate their writing. And it's whatever we're focusing on. So it could be evaluate my thesis, or it could be evaluate my topic sentences, or do I have a sufficient takeaway? And so we use that, and then I have them turn in that feedback to me so that then we can kind of compare and determine if the evaluation is something that they agree with. And sometimes it isn't. Sometimes they have the opportunity then to see the fact that they can reject those suggestions. And they do sometimes because they totally disagree with it, because they see that what ChatGPT or whatever AI is offering doesn't really meet like the human need to it. And that goes back to what was the point of that particular essay.
Sometimes in my experience, I've found the more creative the piece, the more AI can't process it. It's because it's truly unique. So when it's truly unique and truly creative, there are times. So, for example, I was working on how to teach spreadsheets for my 8th grade class using artificial intelligence. And I was using the spreadsheets and I was making a list of all the skills that I wanted to teach my students, which were 12 different skills. And I took those and I fed them into ChatGPT to try to create some content to teach that to my students. And it completely left off the 3 that I thought were the most unique, novel ideas for teaching spreadsheets in artificial intelligence. And I thought, wow, why is it doing that? And the more I've observed it, the more creative it is, the more likely it is to leave it out. So that's why when we use AI to take meeting notes, we have to be really careful that our most creative ideas aren't left out, because it's trained to know how average humans talk, how all of us talk, but not how unique people talk. So see, that's such a valuable observation for kids to have. So here's the big thing that teachers are talking about. Well, how do I know if a student's using artificial intelligence? And when you focus on process like you are, it's really less of an issue, but I still know that you probably deal with it. So how do you notice and how do you approach it?
Well, one thing goes back to, like you were saying, the creative prompting. And so that's what I've been thinking of over the past year. And I've actually changed some of my essay topics. And one of the things that really helped me was taking an idea from the book Small Teaching by James Lang, and that is the minute thesis. And so I actually used that this past December with my students preparing for their semester exam, because I wanted to create a unique essay prompt. And so basically, we listed all the works that we had read on the board. And then I had students brainstorm to come up with common themes between them. Then from those, they also pulled out either their favorite protagonist or antagonist and began to create either a connection between common themes between pieces. And of course, AI couldn't necessarily do that because it's unique to the student. It's what themes they saw in these pieces, or either a comparison to their favorite protagonist or antagonist. And of course, a lot of times students find it more interesting to go antagonist. So we've even composed an essay comparing Brutus and Victor Frankenstein, or, the antagonist or protagonist from Fahrenheit 451 with some other novel that we've read. And so those create more unique topics. So from the get-go, I know that the student is composing something from their own thoughts and minds because it isn't your typical essay. It's something from them. Now, the follow-up is that because I've watched their outline, I've watched their brainstorming, and they've turned in all those individual pieces, it's easier to spot. For one thing, I've seen their writing in process, so I recognize their voice. I recognize what they're writing. Nonetheless, sometimes students are going to grab a sentence from ChatGPT or whatever. So one way that I've educated them, even this year, is with the tool Brisk. And I actually took an old essay that I knew someone had borrowed from, and we ran it through, and they actually watched the essay being evaluated by Brisk and saw where the cutting and pasting happened. And so I educate myself, I educate them, and then I'm not trying to play, chicken with them. I want them to know what's coming. And so I show them what it looks like when we run the essay through Brisk.
Yeah. And this whole gotcha thing, I think the big thing you're doing is you're focusing on the process, not just the product. The days of you have a 5-paragraph essay due every Friday. And the fact that you're doing it in the classroom shows you value the process. And I think when you put value on the process, I think students are less likely to jump in there and cheat themselves out of a good education by using artificial intelligence. Because that's what's happening. When kids don't know how to write, writing in language is more important than ever before because we need the capability to prompt. We need that descriptive language. We need to be able to do it in videos now. I've been experimenting with that. So what is your advice to ELA teachers who are kind of awakening right now because with Apple Intelligence, the update that just happened over break, ChatGPT is available within any app, any tool for those who have the newer Apple devices. You've got Gemini running on personal Google accounts. So our kids have access to AI inside every writing tool. What are your words to teachers who are grappling with this? Like, can I even teach anymore? I mean, some are frustrated.
Well, as we were saying, some of it is using the old tools out of pencil and paper to begin with. And then you really have to monitor what your students are doing. And as we say, to inspect what you expect. So you have to look at the formative pieces. It isn't just, like you said, turn in an essay at the end of the week. I've seen the brainstorm, the outline. I've heard the conversation. And that's one thing that you and I have talked about. I walk around the class, I listen to them sharing it with either a partner or in their peer group. So I actually know what their thoughts are before they're written on paper. The other thing is really trying to help students understand, number one, their thoughts matter and that I'm not interested. I'd rather have a short paragraph than I would a long paragraph written by, artificial intelligence or anything else. So, knowing that their thoughts have value, that their thoughts have meaning, and then to give meaning to the actual assignments. And so that's been one of my goals, is to make their assignments meaningful. We do a lot of short assessments leading up to longer things so that I do recognize their voice over time. And I actually have found that to be valuable, to no longer think, well, it has to be a full-blown essay. Sometimes it's manageable in smaller chunks. So we do a lot of formative, even on in place of a test or with a test. So that is my recommendation that I found to be helpful to me, is try to make it meaningful, try to connect and let it be unique to the student to allow more opportunity for them to express their personal thoughts and opinions, and then to end every assignment with, what is your closing takeaway? Which means that they have to evaluate what they found most meaningful, most impactful, or most important in whether it's a one paragraph reflection on a theme, or if it's a full-blown essay. And then I can have the conversation with them of, why was that impactful to you? And they have to be able to defend their thesis or their paragraph, whatever it is. So I find that is, because if they haven't composed it themselves, and they don't know why, that is most impactful. And so that's helpful.
Is there anything else you want to share? I mean, what do you tell students is your policy on artificial intelligence? That's one thing.
So we have used it in different ways. And if they're using it for editing, we're adding it just as a work citation.
Yes, a citation, because you can do that hyperlink. Absolutely.
And so that's helpful. Using it as a citation. Also, I try to be open with it in the classroom. So if we are using it for an assignment, then we do it together.
Mhm.
We discuss it together and try to be open with it. And otherwise, if I don't want it included, then I specifically state it. And if I want information that is not the first thing that pops up, like from Gemini, then I explain that and make sure that they understand and that they've educated themselves that they have to scroll down and they need to be able to cite an accurate and credible source. So then that's the discussion this week in ninth grade is what is a reliable source? And that opens up a door of opportunity.
And that's an important discussion because a
Yes.
lot of people do want to quote what's at the top of a Google search.
Mhm.
And you can't quote it because it's generative. It changes depending on who typed it in the box. Absolutely cannot use that at the top. You have to click on those links and go to those sources. And sometimes it doesn't accurately summarize those sources. It did that on one of my own blog posts the other day. It summarized 5 points and it wasn't even accurate. And I'm like, folks aren't going to click and go to my blog. They're going to stay at the top of Google and not understand, not be AI literate enough to know that you need to click those links and go through. So thank you for sharing all about artificial intelligence. For those of you listening, this has been Dawne Beck that I teach with here at Sherwood Christian Academy. She's our ELA teacher. We have a lot of conversations about artificial intelligence. I would not pretend to know everything. We don't know everything, but we are teaching students with artificial intelligence. We are having conversations with our students, and we're moving forward and working hard to keep kids from cheating themselves out of a great education. Our kids still need to write. They still need to do math. They still need to be able to do all these things. And artificial intelligence is something they also need to be able to use effectively and appropriately in their classes, their studies, and their businesses. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast. If you want more content from Vicki Davis, you can find her on Facebook, X.com, TikTok, Threads, Instagram, Blue Sky, and YouTube at Cool Cat Teacher. Thank you for listening.